The moment a narcissist can't look you in the eye anymore, it's not because they've moved on. It's because something inside them has cracked and they don't know how to survive being seen. They won't say sorry, they won't explain, but their sudden silence, avoidance, and disappearance tell a deeper story, one rooted in shame they cannot escape. If you've ever wondered why someone who once controlled, blamed, or dismissed you now acts like you don't exist? This is the truth most people never talk about. And by the end of this, you'll understand why their inability to face you is not weakness. It's their quiet punishment. A narcissist avoids facing people who remind them of their wrongdoing because those people threaten the false image they work so hard to protect. It is not about conflict or fear of conversation. It is about the unbearable discomfort of being seen clearly. When you carry the memory of how they lied, manipulated, ignored, or harmed you, you become living proof of something they want erased. They can deny events in their own mind, but they cannot control what you remember. Your awareness becomes a mirror, and that mirror reflects a version of them they cannot tolerate. For a narcissist, the self-image must remain polished and intact at all costs. They need to believe they were justified, misunderstood, or even superior. Someone who remembers the truth threatens that story. Facing you would mean facing moments where they were cruel, selfish, or emotionally unsafe. That awareness activates deep shame, not healthy remorse. Shame makes them feel exposed, small, and defective. Instead of processing it, they retreat. Avoidance becomes their survival strategy. This is why they may disappear, block, ignore, or act as if you never mattered. It is not because they forgot you. It is because your presence reminds them of what they did and who they were in those moments. Even calm, neutral contact can feel overwhelming to them. You do not need to accuse or explain. Simply existing as someone who knows the truth is enough to unsettle them. They may rewrite the story to others to feel safe again, but internally, the discomfort remains. The avoidance is constant work. It requires emotional distance, denial, and distraction. You, on the other hand, are not required to do anything. Your clarity alone becomes the reason they cannot face you. Shame in narcissism is deeply hidden and rarely expressed in healthy or recognizable ways. Unlike remorse, which allows a person to reflect, take responsibility, and repair harm, narcissistic shame is buried because it feels too threatening to the self. When a narcissist feels shame, it does not come with empathy or accountability. It comes with panic, defensiveness, and an urgent need to escape the feeling. Admitting fault would mean admitting imperfection, and that is something their identity cannot tolerate. This is why you almost never see a sincere apology. An apology would require them to sit with the awareness that they hurt someone and that their behavior caused damage. That awareness strikes at the core of how they see themselves. Instead of saying, "I was wrong," they protect themselves by minimizing, blaming, justifying, or disappearing. The shame still exists, but it is pushed underground where it leaks out in indirect ways. You may notice this shame expressed through anger, coldness, arrogance, or complete silence. These are not signs of strength. They are signs of emotional overwhelm. When shame is unprocessed, it does not soften a person. It hardens them. It turns inward and becomes avoidance, or it turns outward and becomes attack. Either way, it never becomes accountability. Because the shame is hidden, it can confuse the people around them. You may wonder how someone who caused so much harm can act so unaffected. The truth is, they are affected, but not in a way that leads to healing. They feel the discomfort without the tools to handle it, so they escape it by pretending it never happened, by erasing you, or by rewriting reality. Avoidance in a narcissist is often mistaken for growth, maturity, or emotional detachment, but it is none of those things. It is a defense mechanism designed to reduce internal discomfort, not a sign of healing or self-awareness. When a narcissist avoids you, the situation, or the conversation, they are not processing what happened. They are escaping the feelings that come with it. Healing requires reflection, responsibility, and tolerance of emotional pain. Avoidance requires none of that. It only requires distance. For a narcissist, facing emotional truth is threatening because it activates shame, vulnerability, and fear of collapse. Rather than sit with those feelings, they create space between themselves and anything that triggers them. That space may look like silence, disappearing, blocking, or acting indifferent. On the surface, it can resemble calm or closure. Internally, it is panic control. The goal is not understanding. The goal is relief. Real healing would involve acknowledging harm, accepting limits, and allowing another person's experience to exist without rewriting it. Avoidance does the opposite. It keeps the narcissist stuck in the same emotional position while giving the illusion of movement. They may seem like they have moved on, but emotionally, they are frozen at the point where accountability would have begun. This is why avoidance often repeats across relationships. The same patterns resurface because nothing was resolved. The feelings were never processed, only postponed. Each new situation requires the same escape. Over time, the world gets smaller. Fewer people feel safe to be around. Fewer mirrors are tolerated. For the person being avoided, this can feel deeply personal, but it is not about your worth. It is about their inability to regulate internal discomfort. You represent unresolved emotion, and avoidance is how they manage what they cannot face. Your calm presence threatens a narcissist's false self because it removes the one thing they rely on to stay in control: emotional reaction. A narcissist's identity is built around power, dominance, and validation. They need to see themselves as important, superior, or justified. When you were reactive, confused, or trying to explain yourself, they could use that energy to reinforce their narrative. But when you become calm, grounded, and emotionally neutral, the dynamic changes in a way they cannot manage. Calmness is not passive to a narcissist. It feels like exposure. When you are no longer chasing, defending, or proving your reality, you are no longer participating in their illusion. Your steadiness highlights the instability they work hard to hide. You are no longer reflecting the image they want to see. Instead, you reflect reality as it is. That contrast is deeply unsettling. The false self depends on external feedback to survive. It needs admiration, fear, or emotional intensity to feel real. Calm offers none of that. Calm says, "I see you clearly and I am not moved." That silence strips away their ability to perform. Without drama, there is no stage. Without reaction, there is no control. This is why your calm can provoke avoidance, hostility, or sudden withdrawal. They may interpret your peace as arrogance or coldness because they cannot understand emotional regulation that is not manipulative. To them, emotions are tools, not experiences. When you no longer engage on that level, they feel irrelevant, and irrelevance feels like annihilation. Your calm also signals independence. It tells them they are no longer central to your emotional world. That realization threatens the core belief that they are special or indispensable. Being around you becomes too risky because your presence quietly confirms that their power over you is gone. Silence and disappearance are among the narcissist's most powerful tools, and they function as forms of self-protection rather than punishment toward you. When a narcissist suddenly withdraws or refuses to engage, it's not because you provoked them or that they have finally grown up. It is because being near you now threatens their fragile self-image. Your presence serves as a constant reminder of what they cannot control, and the only way they know to cope is to remove themselves from the equation entirely. Disappearing allows them to avoid facing emotions they cannot tolerate, shame, guilt, or the reality of their harmful actions. Silence creates a buffer that prevents you from reflecting back the truth they fear, that they hurt someone they cannot manipulate or dominate anymore. By removing themselves physically or emotionally, they reduce the immediate discomfort of exposure. They may appear distant, cold, or indifferent, but inside, this withdrawal is driven by fear, panic, and the need to preserve the illusion of control. This behavior also serves to regulate their internal chaos. Being confronted with the reality of how they acted or seeing you thrive without them triggers intense feelings they are unprepared to handle. Their disappearance is an attempt to pause the threat, even if temporarily. They are not apologizing, explaining, or attempting repair because doing so would require emotional honesty they cannot sustain. For the person on the receiving end, this can feel confusing or painful. You may wonder if the narcissist even cares or if they are intentionally punishing you. The truth is, their silence is a mirror of their own inability to cope. You are not being avoided because you are insignificant. You are being avoided because you matter too much. Your presence, your healing, and your boundaries expose what they cannot face, and disappearing is the only defense they know to manage that exposure. In essence, silence and disappearance are not about you. They are the narcissist's protective shield, a reflection of their shame and a silent acknowledgement that they cannot confront the truth of themselves. A narcissist has an almost compulsive need to rewrite the story of events to protect their self-image, and this is a central reason they cannot face you. When confronted with the reality of their actions, they feel threatened because the truth exposes flaws they refuse to acknowledge. To cope, they reconstruct the narrative in their mind or in front of others, making themselves the victim, minimizing their behavior, or blaming circumstances and people around them. This rewriting is not just deception, it is a psychological shield. By controlling the story, they control the threat that comes with being seen for who they truly are. Your presence, your memory, and your awareness interrupt this carefully constructed narrative. You remember exactly what happened, how it made you feel, and the consequences of their behavior. That clarity is unbearable for a narcissist because it cannot be easily manipulated. They cannot charm, gaslight, or rewrite reality in your presence, and that makes facing you impossible. The truth you carry becomes a constant mirror, reflecting the version of them that they desperately want to erase. This need to rewrite history also allows them to maintain their fragile ego in other relationships. To outsiders, they can appear composed, justified, or even admirable, while internally they are panicking. The dissonance between their public persona and the truth you represent increases their shame and anxiety. They avoid confrontation not out of indifference, but out of fear of exposure. Even when they act confident or detached, the rewriting continues internally. Every memory, interaction, or outcome is filtered through a lens of self-preservation. Your calm, your boundaries, and your refusal to participate in their altered narrative threaten the very foundation they rely on. You are a living contradiction to the story they tell themselves, which makes facing you intolerable. Ultimately, the narcissist's compulsive need to rewrite history keeps them trapped in avoidance while you remain free in your truth. Your healing exposes the narcissist for who they truly are, and that is one of the hardest realities for them to face. For a narcissist, the world exists to validate their self-image, to give them attention, admiration, and a sense of control. They rely on other people's reactions to confirm that they are important, powerful, or superior. When you begin to heal, detach, or regain your emotional strength, you stop giving them the fuel they need. Your progress becomes a mirror showing them the harm they caused, the ways they manipulated you, and the reality they cannot deny. This exposure is terrifying to them because it forces a confrontation they cannot manage. Unlike you, they are not accustomed to examining their behavior or feeling the consequences of their actions in a healthy way. Your growth, calmness, and independence reveal that the past cannot be rewritten, that the emotional hold they had over you is gone, and that you no longer need their approval. It highlights their inadequacy and leaves them without the defenses they usually rely on: manipulation, projection, or control. They may react by withdrawing, avoiding, or even trying to undermine your progress, but none of these actions change the truth. The narcissist cannot undo your healing, and they cannot reclaim the control they lost. Every step you take towards self-sufficiency is a reminder that they were responsible for the pain you endured. Your strength exposes their inability to genuinely connect, empathize, or take accountability, and that is deeply uncomfortable for them. Ultimately, your healing does not just free you, it forces them to confront the consequences of their actions, even if silently. They cannot face you because your presence now embodies clarity, resilience, and truth. The things they fear most because they highlight exactly what they cannot be. Walking away from a narcissist often becomes the consequence they never expected because it removes their control entirely. Throughout the relationship, they relied on your reactions, your confusion, your attempts to reason, your emotional engagement, to feed their sense of power and importance. When you step back, set boundaries, or choose not to engage, you break the cycle that sustained them. Suddenly, their strategies, manipulation, gaslighting, charm, no longer work. You are no longer an instrument of their self-image, and that loss is experienced as a form of panic they rarely show outwardly. This reaction is not about you being unkind or vengeful. It is about your absence revealing a truth they cannot tolerate, that they are not indispensable, that their behavior has consequences, and that the world continues without their approval or control. The narcissist may attempt to regain influence, but your detachment exposes the weakness they have long ignored. They cannot face the reality that their power was never as secure as they believed. Walking away forces them to confront the emptiness behind their persona. Your departure highlights the fragility of the false self they spent years building. They cannot manipulate your perception anymore, cannot rewrite history for you, and cannot rely on your emotional reactions as a measure of their worth. In essence, your act of leaving becomes a mirror of their limitations, showing them the truth they have refused to acknowledge. While you may never see an apology or recognition, the act of walking away imposes a silent punishment. It is not revenge, it is clarity. It is your freedom reflecting back the consequences of their choices. And for the narcissist, being confronted with a life they cannot influence, a person they cannot control, and a truth they cannot escape is perhaps the most powerful and inescapable punishment they will ever experience. In the end, the narcissist cannot face you because you have become a living reminder of everything they cannot admit, control, or change. Your presence, your calm, your healing, and your boundaries strip away the illusions they carefully built to protect themselves. They cannot apologize, they cannot explain, and they cannot rewrite the truth you carry. Silence, avoidance, withdrawal, and rewriting the story are not signs of strength. They are signs of shame, fear, and inner collapse. You do not need their recognition or closure to validate your reality. Your survival, your clarity, and your freedom are the ultimate reflection of truth, and that is the consequence they will never fully escape. In a way, your existence becomes their silent punishment, the mirror they cannot shatter, the reality they cannot deny, and the truth they cannot face. And through it all, you remain unshaken, resilient, and free.